Hey everybody, it is now October and we are in the thick of the Halloween spooky season. For us horror movie fans, this month gives us the opportunity to really delve into some of our favorite films, obscure films, some we haven't seen. It just puts us in the mood. I know personally it does that for me, especially as a seasonal movie watcher. And to be honest, as a seasonal movie watcher, I save all of my horror movie viewings for basically this month and some of September. And that's weird considering it's my favorite genre, right? There are some I do watch year round, but this month is where I really put focus onto it. And this month also inspires me to write a lot of horror films, write down a lot of ideas, brainstorm, jot things down, draw. It's just a very, I don't know, there's just something about this time of year that inspires me. So with all that being said, let's delve into one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Probably my favorite horror movie of all time and one of my favorite movies of all time, and that is John Carpenter's Halloween 1978.
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
Now, this movie is a cut above the rest. I saw it when I was real little. I have vague memories of being scared and my mom comforting me. I remember the dog dying, the German Shepherd on the side of the house. I remember Michael's silhouette, the hedge scene, the scenes where he's creeping around. I remember those specifically in my psyche. And my mother and I actually used to drive around town around Halloween in October and would point out where it would be scary, what place would be scary for Michael Myers to be standing, whether it was a staircase, the side of someone's house, an alleyway, a lamppost. You know, we would spend hours doing that. That was a deeply influential time of my life when it came to films and filmmaking. And here I am today discussing them and attempting to make them. So back to the film. Like I said, this movie is a cut above the rest. There are tons of slasher movies that we've seen and that we love, frankly. Scream, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I discussed earlier, and that kind of stands apart too because its filmmaking there is pretty special. But we can go throughout the decades and just talk about all sorts of slasher movies, from My Bloody Valentine to Happy Death Day to the remakes, the Scream reboots, to Jason Voorhees and the Friday the 13th series, which we still have to finish a part 2 on. The Burning, obscure ones like that, and they are fun, and a lot of them are really good and enjoyable and rewatchable, and some are just god-awful and forgettable. You can just countless ones throughout the decades that, you know, we remember, we forget, yada yada yada. So back to Halloween. This film specifically to me, and I think in popular opinion, and please correct me if I'm wrong, stands above the rest. Its filmmaking is incredible, and the real reason behind this is because it's John Carpenter, and he's a director, and you can tell when you watch his films that he has a certain style and he's a certain way of just delivering you the story with, you know, scares, with well-written characters, well-written dialogue, and he just has such a touch on it, and he's cool. His movies are awesome, but this film in general is a king among horror movies. And when you watch it, you really, it's funny because at the end of the film, you can look back and you say to yourself, it was really just such a simple concept, aside from the rest of the franchise. But this film itself was definitely just a really simple concept. And I think that's how it came about when a producer had called John Carpenter and he says, I want a Halloween movie to release on Halloween and maybe and whatever. And through discussions, and John Carpenter was like, hey, yeah, we'll have a slasher movie. An escaped mental patient kills a bunch of girls on Halloween. I mean, it's perfect. It was the 70s. We were coming out of the 60s. Texas Chainsaw Massacre had come out prior to Halloween, and we were really starting to get into more grittier horror films, bloodier horror films, shock kind of effect horror films. But, you know, 1978, here comes Halloween, this simple story. An escaped mental patient returns to his hometown on Halloween night where he grew up long ago, and he killed his sister, and he stalks a bunch of girls, a bunch of kids, kills them, and that's really the gist of it. It's just how that is executed is which makes it an incredible film. You have Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, obviously. You have PJ Souls as one of her friends. You have Nancy Loomis playing Annie. And then, of course, you have the great Donald Pleasence, which is just, you know, another added bonus to this film.
You mean you actually never want him to get out?
Never, never, never.
Then why are we taking him up to Hardin County if you're just gonna lock...
Because that is the law.
And they really got lucky with him because he's almost become this iconic character of himself, aside from Michael and Laurie. You know, and the way this film progresses, you know, you're introduced really quickly to Michael's murder as a baby. You had the POV shot, which was really new back then. You set the tone, you set the vibes in that initial 1960s sequence. And what's interesting too is, you know, the beginning sequence and the rest of the film takes place on Halloween night and Halloween day, as we see in the beginning of both sequences. And what's cool is it's not overly Halloween-y. You know, you watch the new one, Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills, and I guess Halloween Ends. The way they show Halloween is very in your face. Look at the town, everybody's out, lights are everywhere, decorations are everywhere, the leaves are everywhere, there's pumpkins, there's displays, it's just, you know, like a big party. Now, I know towns that do that. I lived in a town that did that for some time, and it's really cool, but I think it almost does a disservice to the film because it's as if they're saying, look, it's Halloween. Look, scary, Michael Myers, Halloween. But if you look back at the older films, or the first film really, it's a pumpkin on a stairwell. You know, there's a mask, someone's wearing a mask or a costume. There's a couple kids over there, you know, trick-or-treating. You know, there's talk of Halloween. We're going to carve pumpkins. People are watching scary movies. So there's almost a very grounded, realistic feel to that.
Trick or treat! Trick or treat!
And it does a service because it's almost kind of normal and kind of bland. But then you have these shocking events occur over it. And we also know that the first film was filmed in California during the summertime. So they had to bring in leaves and put them around the streets to kind of bring an October-y feel. And in a weird way, it really works with the greenery and the clothing of the characters and the decorations and the Halloween talk. You believe it's Halloween because it's a good movie. So you don't really care that there's palm trees perhaps in the distance of some shots, or green trees that would be in the middle of July in some shots. It doesn't matter because your focus is on the story and the characters. And of course, the way John Carpenter films this just takes it to another level. Oh, fun fact. The leaves that they had to bring in to put around the street for the shots, so they made it look like October, one of the interns, I think he was an intern, putting those leaves out was Robert Englund, aka Freddy Krueger. So he got his start early in one of the Halloween movies. Nice little interesting connection there. So we're back in the 60s. We see Michael kill his sister. His parents come around. Oh, what did you do? We flash forward now. It's the 70s. Dr. Loomis is his doctor, Donald Pleasence, and he's basically saying this guy needs to be locked up forever. He's nuts. He's devoid of any humanity. He just sees blackness. He looks beyond. It's just pure evil. Everyone thinks Dr. Loomis is nuts, but you know they're not setting this guy free. But they're like, all right, you're overreacting a little bit. He's just a deranged criminal. Dr. Loomis is with this nurse, and they're on their way to the hospital to do a transfer that he's against, but they have to do it anyways.
Don't underestimate it,
Don't you think we could refer to it as him?
if you say so.
And he wants to oversee it. And as they pull up in the dark, rainy night, there's a bunch of mental patients meandering about. It's really cool. It's really well shot, kind of like this, you know, Night of the Living Dead almost, it reminded me of. But the headlights light the scene, and you just get the feeling. You know, it's not over the top. There's not people running around like in the 2018 one, laughing with the chain, acting crazy. There's just people in white patient outfits walking through the night in the rain, and it's just, you know that they're crazy people.
Since when did they let them wander around?
Pull up to the main gate.
Shouldn't we put...
Go on, move.
So eventually Michael takes the car, scares and attacks the nurse. So that unfolds rather quickly. Michael takes their car and he is on his way to Haddonfield, which he gets to eventually. Some things happen in between. And at that point, he just stalks and creeps the hell out of you. I mean, he's never blatantly showing his face. He's riding around town. He's following some of our characters. You get hints that a store was broken into and masks and knives were stolen, so there's a little call out to Michael. Kind of grabs one of the bullies that Tommy Doyle was afflicted by, scares him. And in that moment, it's kind of weird because you hate the bully for what he did to Tommy Doyle, so Michael scares the crap out of this bully. And for me, I was just like, yeah, Michael. You know, even though, you know, it's the first movie and he's a deranged psychopath, but there's kind of a weird thing going on there. So eventually, Michael just keeps stalking them. There's some really cool sequences with the hedges. Oh, and earlier in the film, when Laurie Strode is on her way to school, her and Tommy Doyle are walking, and she has to drop the keys off at the Myers house. And this is one of my favorite shots. She walks up to the screen door, camera's on the inside of the screen door, looking out the screen. Laurie walks up. Tommy's like, don't go up there. The house is haunted. She's like, ooh, no, I don't think it is. You know, whatever, it's fine. She puts the keys down and walks away, and you hear the breathing, and then you see the head kind of come into shot, and it's just kind of rocking. It's just Michael Myers, man, in that old William Shatner white mask, just this there, you know, the curly hair, the curls. Carpenter holds the shot, it just works, and then she's walking away, and he kind of steps into frame too.
Just the two of us.
So Michael has this weird ability to kind of vanish, appear. There's one scene where he's in the clotheslines and Laurie's looking out and she blinks and he's gone again. So there's this feeling of supernatural. There's a supernatural aspect that kind of bubbles to the surface in this film, and you never know if Michael is supernatural or is he just human, and they really ride that line nicely. Because Michael, you never really know. I mean, the future films get too complex, it gets convoluted, this and that, and they kind of just start repeating each other through the franchise. But as this film stands apart and stands alone, everything is perfectly done, especially that aspect. So it's later in the film. It's nighttime now. Yeah, Laurie's still a little freaked out by this guy that seemingly has been stalking her throughout the last, portion of the movie up until this point. Now they are babysitting. You have Annie babysitting Lindsay Wallace on one side of the street. You have Laurie babysitting Tommy Doyle on the other side of the street. And you have their other friend who's out with her boyfriend that's going to come over and meet up with them. And there's just this normal thing kids do in high school, especially when they have other responsibilities. They're still trying to hang out, they're still trying to get their rocks off, they're still trying to mess around, they're still trying to drink, but at the same time they're still handling the responsibilities of taking care of these kids. One thing I used to laugh about was, where are the parents? They all happen to be out on Halloween night at a party doing something late. But we never asked that question because the movie's so good and the story's so enveloping and it's just such a well done piece of art that you don't care about that weird question. In a bad movie, you would, because you would be angry and frustrated with terrible writing, and you would say, well, why this, and that. But this movie has such little of that you don't care. And now the deaths begin. You have Annie, who's babysitting Lindsay Wallace, and there's this really cool sequence as Annie's getting ready for the night, where she gets stuck in the laundry room, which is a separate building on the outside of the house. And it's just really dark and really creepy, and she's kind of stuck in this window, and there's just this other shot of Michael Myers behind her in the window through the curtain, and it's just setting tone, this creepy guy in a white mask.
Oh, Lindsay, get the phone. It's Paul. Lindsay.
Yeah, Michael. She sends Lindsay begrudgingly over to Tommy Doyle's house with Laurie so she can go pick her boyfriend up. Getting ready to leave, she gets looking for the keys. She gets in her car, and oops, Michael's in the car, and he winds up strangling her. And I didn't realize till later viewings that he actually slits her throat too. And the acting's a little cheesy on Nancy Loomis's part, but it still works because it's Halloween, 1978. It's fantastic. Dr. Loomis is now in the town, running around. He contacts the sheriff. The sheriff and him go to the Michael Myers old house, And, you know, they don't really believe him yet, but there is evidence that Michael has been on his way, whether it was the tow truck driver who was found killed, whether it was the break-in at the hardware store. You know, Dr. Loomis is bringing this presence of paranoia, and he's really kind of crazy about it. I mean, if I was a cop and this guy came in ranting and raving about this, I'd be a little apprehensive, but he's got the facts to back him up, so they do go along with him.
Oh, I do have to prove it.
Seems to me you're just plain scared.
Yes.
You have Dr. Loomis telling Sheriff Brackett the story of Michael, that iconic speech he gives.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death.
And again, it's not overly Halloween. There's not people everywhere. It's very quiet. It's very desolate. It's dark out. There's some decorations. You know, Laurie's watching horror movies with Tommy. Lindsay with Annie is watching horror movies. And it's just a normal Halloween night, possibly a school night. I don't even know if that's a reference, but it just feels like how I grew up in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, rather than this over-the-top celebration. So now, unbeknownst to Laurie, Annie is now dead. And you're in this little sequence where Tommy Doyle's sitting on the couch with Lindsay Wallace. They're watching a horror movie, and he decides to get up, go behind the window curtain, and scare Lindsay. You know, Lindsay, Lindsay. And she's all like, what's going on? Where are you? Where are you, Tommy? And as he's doing that, he turns around, looks out the window, and you have this badass Michael Myers with the little pumpkin on the porch, the couple lights, carrying Annie Brackett, and the music's hitting, and he walks up the thing, and he kicks open the door and then shuts it. And Tommy is just freaked out. Yeah, Michael. Now we cut back to Linda and Bob, who, I think his name's Bob. I think I got that right. I should know this. Anyhow, they show up at where Annie's supposed to be, and nobody's there. The lights are out. Well, we know she's there. She's dead. And we know Michael's there, lurking somewhere. They're just there to have a good time. They wound up, you know, having sex, and you get the whole sequence now when she's in the bedroom and tells him to go get me some beer and whatever, and it's real cute and funny. And he goes downstairs, and of course we get Bob's infamous death. Michael comes out of the closet, brilliantly done, brilliant jump scare. It's not an overused jump scare. You didn't even need music really to freak you out at this point. You always have to have a jump scare, and I'm not against jump scares, but when done right, when done at the right moment, they work brilliantly. And here you go. We created an icon with this jump scare. Lifts Bob up and stabs him through the chest and pins him up against the wall. And then does the infamous head tilt, which is completely overdone now. I mean, if I see one more Halloween Ends TV spot or a new Halloween movie do the whole, look, I'm Michael Myers, this is what I do, my head's gonna blow up. It was once, it worked. It was for Bob, that's it. And the physics of that really don't make sense, because a butcher knife is not going to be holding up a seemingly big high schooler up against a wall. And he probably wasn't even a high schooler when they filmed this. He was just a big dude, probably in his 20s. It's not going to hold anybody up. But don't care, because it's Halloween and it's an awesome movie. So Bob's dead. Linda's upstairs, and Michael does his little funny prank thing. He puts the ghost thing on with Bob's glasses and messes with her, and it's really creep factor. This isn't just like a dumb monster Jason Voorhees going around killing people. Nothing against Jason. I love Jason, but we're talking about Michael Myers, 1978 here. It's another level. A brilliant scene. Guy puts glasses over a ghost sheet. Could you picture Michael cutting the eyes out of the sheet to put it on? It's so funny. So he winds up strangling her, and now Laurie's really wondering what's going on. He tells Lindsay and Tommy to stay put. She goes across the street, and we get one of the best horror sequences ever as she enters this dark perfectly creepily lit house. It's so scary. It's so normal. It's if you walked into a house and all the lights were off. It was just so well shot.
Linda? Annie?
She eventually goes upstairs. She's the one room with the light on. And there's Annie Brackett laid out with Michael's sister's grave behind her. It's some weird shrine. And she just starts screaming. And, she starts seeing all her friends. Linda in the closet. Bob comes swinging down. And then you have the black, cutout doorway perfectly framed. And Michael's face just emerging. I mean, what brilliant directing you have here. Laurie winds up getting stabbed in the arm, falling over the stairs. And this is just a micro scene that's actually really, really tense, to be honest. And it gets me every time. She falls over the stairs, hurts herself. Michael looks over. She goes to run this way. He starts walking down the stairs. Door's locked, so she has to run past that dark stairwell again as he's coming down. Goes into the kitchen, shuts the door. And the tension in this scene is so perfect. The way she breaks the glass, she can't get the door open. She can't, and Michael's coming in. It's just cut back and forth so good. You are convinced there's no way he can't get her. And she finally manages to get out, run across the street, and he's just calmly walking her. And you got that amazing John Carpenter score, which we'll get into. The boom.
Who is it? Tommy, open up, it's me! Yeah, Tommy, please! Tommy, hurry up! Tommy, please!
She eventually gets in the house. She wakes Tommy Doyle up. They're all freaked out.
Get upstairs. What is it? Go right upstairs. Get Lindsay, lock the bedroom door. Do as I say. Hurry!
So Michael winds up breaking in, and classic. She stabs him with the sewing needle, and then she goes upstairs.
Kill the boogeyman.
Get in there. Come on, Tommy. Now lock the door.
Thinks she killed him again. She goes out. She tells the kids to go down the street, get help.
Go do as I say.
Laurie's there, exasperated. And in the background, yeah, Michael. So she comes out, and Michael comes behind her. Get a sense that he's just tired of this one too. Why does she keep surviving? Why is she getting me? And as she's doing that, and she actually rips his mask off, we see his half-lit face and his messed up eye from the hanger, kind of looking there. And he puts the mask back on. Dr. Loomis comes up the stairs. Dr. Loomis runs over, looks in the room. This is a really creepy shot of Michael too. He's just standing there with the curly hair, silhouette. And Dr. Loomis shoots him off the deck. And he gives the infamous line.
was the boogeyman.
As a matter of fact, it was.
And then he looks over the deck, and Michael's gone. Perfect ending. Simple movie, to the point, straightforward, executed with precision, brilliance, and just classic John Carpenter. And then at the end credits, after Michael disappears, you get this sequence of shots, still shots from all different locations within the house in the movie, and Michael breathing over it. And those shots are just so unsettling because they're just so simple and there's just something about it. And it was really cool that they did that at the end of the film. And I always think that when I see that. And you also have added things onto this film, like the score that John Carpenter composed himself. A brilliant, simple score. A simple score just to go with a simple movie. And it's just so effective. We don't need to overcomplicate things. And too many films and shows nowadays overcomplicate things. Back to basics, please. The best horror movies are simple, straightforward premises, straightforward stories with good characters. You know, Halloween had good characters. I mean, Laurie Strode was believable, Annie was believable, Linda was believable, their friends were believable. I mean, were they kind of deeply, complexly written? Not really. But they were believable teenagers. And you got Dr. Loomis, who's an incredible character done by Donald Pleasence. And if you combine good writing for the movie, that's really all you need. If you have the premise and you have the characters, especially for a slasher film. I love this movie. This is on my top 10 list of all time. Probably my number one horror movie. And the opening credits in the film themselves are incredible. Oh, God, I just go on and on about this movie. As you can see, I'm really passionate about this film. It's a go-to time and time again. There's just not much I can really say about it, except if you haven't seen Halloween 1978, absolutely 100% go watch it as soon as possible. And I'm sure everyone who sees this video has seen it. But there's never any bad time to talk about this movie.
Hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from there.